welcome into This Is Anfield. We're our very first show. Liverpool one game in already this season with the victory against Leeds. I'm joined by Chris Williams and Matt Ladson. We're going to look back at that Leeds performance and look ahead to the Chelsea game as well. And we're also going to talk about the transfer window and what business we expect Liverpool to do or not do.
Mo Salah slams it in, and Liverpool have their fourth and maybe their final lead of an exhilarating opening night at Anfield.
I always felt Leeds on the opening day of the season was going to be difficult because they're a team, they've had success last year, they're buzzing to be in the Premier League again, and it proved to be a win. But what did you make overall of the performance?
I think that at the end of the day, we've always started with a little bit of a chaotic game, and with the whole fact of that international break just before the season starting, which was absolutely a shambles, it was probably always going to be that way, and especially because of the way that Leeds play. So it can't be that much of a surprise, and I don't really think that we should be analysing too much the negative element. I remember, obviously, the start of last season, a more traditional start to the season, but there was still the whole concern over the defence and new high defensive line, which Klopp denied a few times. You know, we played Chelsea in the Super Cup, they got in behind us a few times, and there was all sorts of sort of, is it right, is it not going to right? 2 months later, nobody was talking about that anymore. So I think that it was a great test for us, really. If anything, it maybe was the kind of game we needed after going so long without a competitive game against a real team that are actually going for it, to actually give us a kick up the backside and say, right, this is it, we're back in, this is full throttle again now.
Yeah, I mean, for me, you look back, I always like the start of the season because normally with Liverpool, it starts with a bit of a bang. If you look back at last season, we started with a really good result against Norwich. Go back a little bit further, there was that classic game against Arsenal. I just like the start of the season. I think you can't read too much into it from one game. Apart from that, we can attack. I think everybody thought, well, have Liverpool lost their attacking edge when we came back after the lockdown? I think we can all see we've got that back now. There's little issues that need to be sorted out, but I'm sure that Klopp and the whole team will have seen where they need to work upon. But from where we were when we came back in June, July time to now, and the game against Leeds, I definitely think there was an improvement, maybe a tenfold improvement as well.
Yeah, I looked at this game and I thought everybody said Leeds caused so many problems for Liverpool, but I can't really remember that many saves for Alisson or that many, I know they got in threatening positions, but for me, I look at the two goals in the first half and I thought they were both pretty poor mistakes. So I don't think in the run of play, we were broken down as much as, maybe the scoreline would suggest. My bigger issue was at the start of that second half. I thought we had a really good spell. We got into the final third, and I felt like this last season as well. Man City would turn 1-0, 2-0 games into 4 5-0 games really quickly. I felt like that was still an issue for me. I felt like Mane got in a couple of good positions. Firmino got in on goal. And we have to be a little bit more clinical and put these teams away, because if they do hang around, you give them a little bit of hope.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken about, everybody knows how good our front three are, but that is exactly it. You just need that sometimes, that clinical. And obviously last season, as you just said there, where we didn't turn it in, we were always winning by one goal. And, it was a marginal win every time. It was a late winner, or we're pushing, or we're holding on in the final few minutes. And I think it was Jordan Henderson this week speaking about that, where they said, so many times they came off the pitch last season, and although we'd won, they'd be saying to each other, we can do better, we need to play better. And we do need to sort of put that to bed a little bit, especially because of the way that this season is going to be so condensed. I don't think they're going to be able to go for them, 90th, 92nd minute winners as regularly as we did last season. But I think that, being able to get 2 or 3 ahead, and that's where Klopp said then, you can conserve energy. And we sort of did that more, not last season, but the season before. And we had a bit of success, and we played a slightly different shape sometimes when we played Salah through the middle, and we were winning more games by bigger scorelines, but obviously we weren't winning as many games come the end of the season. So it's something that we can improve on, and obviously the individual errors at the back will eradicate eventually, I'm very confident.
The problem I think I picked up on early on, and you nailed it there, Keith, was that can we get the ball in the back of the net? There was one part where Firmino was clear through, and I thought he was going to try and just hit it, but he tried to square it across the box for someone. And I don't know if that maybe shows a little bit lack of confidence or he just took the wrong option. But Mane was very busy. I think on another day he gets a couple of goals. Obviously Salah was, superb, sublime, take any description you want beginning with S. But he was tremendous. And I just hope that we can get those extra goals, because if we get them sort of opportunities in the next game against Chelsea and we don't take them, I think they've got a lot more firepower to hurt us than Leeds did. Although Leeds did play very well and took their opportunities, I think Chelsea will create a little bit more. But then, having watched them this evening and seeing how Brighton got in behind them, I think we could be in for another 4-3, 5-4 classic.
It's funny, when I look at it, I watched the same game, I thought Brighton looked really bright in possession without ever threatening. I think a lot of people mention this Liverpool high line. There's a couple of things on it. If you want to attack Liverpool and send numbers in behind, you have to be brave, because Liverpool are going to counter you, and Liverpool are still one of the best counter-attacking teams as well in Europe for me. So I think it's quite easy to say everyone will have that Leeds approach, but Liverpool, not at their best, still scored 4, could have had more. Trent wasn't at his best, who's one of our biggest outlets in attack. So I think it's quite easy to say, it's like a boxer, isn't it? Saying, yeah, you can throw punches, but you may get knocked out. And Liverpool have that knockout ability. But my biggest concern, I would say, I don't know how you guys feel, and I felt this towards the end of last season. I think Joe Gomez has every single attribute you would want from a centre-back. But for me, when he steps, he doesn't do it with authority. And I felt he was cut out a few times at the weekend. And I still look at that Joel Matip back, and, when we have big games, is Matip a better foil for Van Dijk? Because when Van Dijk and Gomez have been together recently, I felt a little bit nervy with that partnership, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I've heard a few people saying that about Matip, bringing him back in. It's just would you bring him back in for such a big game straight away as Chelsea? I can't remember the last time Matip started a game for us, in all honesty. So it'd be a big call to make that. But, he brought Henderson in on Saturday, and he hadn't played for 3-4 months, however long it was. So wouldn't be a complete surprise. We've kind of taken it for granted almost that Gomez and Van Dijk are a centre-back partnership that is going to start every game. But maybe there is a discussion to be had there now around Matip. And you've got to remember that he was absolutely superb alongside Van Dijk for quite a long while before he got injured. So it might be time to have a look at it again, give Gomez a little bit of a time out. And it's not as though he's still not going to play. He's still going to get plenty of games, because the games are going to be arriving. This is the only week now until, I think, next November or something mad that we had weekend. Literally midweek every single week now, except this 1 week. So, it's not as though if you play Matip in one game, Gomez is never going to play again.
Chris, I'm interested now. I mean, we've seen Gomez go to right back. I thought Trent will play against Chelsea. I think we all know that, but he was below his best. But it's going to be fascinating, because you cover the Bundesliga a lot as well. Timo Werner is best when he drifts out to, the left to Liverpool's right-hand side and try exploiting attack space. And that matchup there is a little bit of a concern. We saw at the weekend, Harrison really give Trent some trouble by staying high, by being really direct when he attacked. And it took Trent out of our attack, and it also showed his vulnerability defensively. So I wonder at some stage against Chelsea, if we do have a lead in the game where, Klopp says, I'm going to play Matip at centre-back, I'm going to bring Joe Gomez in and really shut down that avenue where Werner likes to attack. It's going to be interesting to see if at some stage that happens.
Yeah, it will, because what Werner will do is he will exploit that high line if Trent Alexander-Arnold is way up the pitch and he gets the ball in behind him, he will go at such an electric pace. And you commentated Bundesliga games plenty. You'll remember the break that Timo Werner did against Hamburg, I think it was, where he just went from his own box and scored from a tremendous angle, and it was seconds, and that's how fast he is. So it will be interesting to see that. But it also may push him back a little bit, because he might be, he may be a little bit wary that he still has to do that defensive part for Chelsea. He's not just going to be asked to stay high and wide. Lampard will expect him to drop back a little. I saw that game today. He did drift in a little bit. But for me, it's very frightening, because it's on that side where Gomez could potentially play as a centre-back on that side. So, it's a little bit of a worry for there. I actually, when we were asked to choose Liverpool's strongest 11 for This Is Anfield, I chose Matip over Gomez, not because I've got a problem with Gomez. I just think he's still in his development phase, and Matip can read the game just a little quicker because he's a little older. But yeah, on the coming weekend, the matchup between Werner and Trent Alexander-Arnold will be a fascinating one. And I think we've seen before Trent can do a job against world-class players. He did it in the Champions League in his first season, and he also did it in the Champions League last season. So I've got no doubts about his defensive capability. It's just that, is he able to go and attack as much? And you're quite right, he wasn't able to do that against Leeds, but then Leeds offered Mohamed Salah a lot of space and he exploited that. So if you look after one area within Liverpool's side, there's 10 other players who can hurt you. So I'm hoping that'll work in our favour.
And I guess if you look at Brighton today, Lamptey was probably their best player on the field coming forward from right back. So it didn't stop him getting forward and being involved in the attack. But you mentioned Salah. Guys, I mean, for me, it's so funny. 2 seasons in, people still talking, Salah, yeah, he's been good. But 3 seasons in, yeah, this is an area. And he starts the season with a hat-trick. I mean, is it crazy to say that this player is still underrated by certain elements of the Liverpool fan base, or is that just the cesspool that is Twitter, and don't go there to read opinions on top players?
I think it's definitely a bit of the latter. I think with everything that we discuss, we need to nuance it with like Twitter opinions being what you just said. But it's a weird one because Salah was like really disappointing at the end of last season, after lockdown, and when we came back, and he was sort of chasing that 20th goal that he obviously wanted, and he wanted the golden boot again. And Gary Neville was talking on Sky Sports about like his drive to be world class. Like Salah wants to be the world's best, and he's probably going to be the world's best player once Ronaldo and Messi have completely moved aside in a year or two. But at the same time, we don't quite realise that we've got this player who's literally the world's best now. So he is probably a little bit underappreciated, whether that's because we are a little bit burned by when Suarez was arguably that good and Torres was, and they sort of ended with, we all ended up in, they've left before they actually achieved something. Salah's now achieving them here at the club. Give it another year or two, and I think that he will be rightly placed along the absolute greats. And
you mentioned too that seemed to be revered by the fans, and I know Mo Salah, the proper Liverpool fans do appreciate. But when you mentioned Suarez, you mentioned Torres, there was that bond with the fans, and I still feel like when Salah plays, there's little factions where it's like, well, he loses the ball in certain areas, and I don't think, for me anyway, I don't think fans fully grasp how much space he opens up when he stays wide for others. When he comes inside, how difficult it is for a fullback to come out and defend Trent, because if they leave Salah open, they're going to get really, really exploited. So for me, it's quite bizarre. Mane is top level, of course, but I think Mane has that more of a relationship where everyone's like, nah, he is top level. But with Salah, Chris, I mean, would you agree that there's still some people out there that genuinely say, well, he's not that great a footballer in terms of how he is in possession and things like that?
I think you definitely find them online. I don't know how many people like that, because you think back to when Liverpool have torn teams apart. You go back to the Roma game in the Champions League where Salah was simply unplayable, the Manchester United game at home. I think there's a connection there with, and I dread to say it, but there's a connection there with match-going fans. I think maybe fans who are half-hearted a little, or maybe want more of him. The thing about Mohamed Salah is he could probably, if he was super clinical, get a hat-trick every game because he gets himself into tremendous positions. Occasionally, he will just take the wrong option. But I don't particularly mind that, because a man scores over 20 goals a season. Yeah, he could probably score 35 to 40 goals a season, but we all know realistically that's not going to happen. All players are going to miss just as much as they score. But I think it's because Salah gets himself into those such good areas, and when he is wide, he cuts in, or he links up well with Mane and Firmino in the box, that maybe he should get a few more goals than he does. But you can't really say anything bad about him, because he is, Klopp didn't want to say anything bad about him in that press conference after the game. He just waxed lyrical on him. And I think we saw that maybe Mohamed Salah answered a few people who were questioning him with that performance against Leeds.
Matt, we're moving on to Chelsea. It fits quite nicely because Salah, Mane, Firmino, everyone's talked about the front three. You need to bring in a little bit of depth. There was talk of obviously Timo Werner coming in. That deal didn't happen. You come up against a Chelsea side that spent so much money to try catch Liverpool. Are you surprised? I mean, just for both of you guys, that Liverpool haven't spent more up until this point. Do they need to spend more? And if they do spend, what area of the field do they need to spend that money on?
I think that every supporter would agree that the main priority now has got to be getting a little bit more depth in attack. We've been so lucky with the front three not really picking up any injuries of note over the last 3 years that they've been together playing regularly. But there's also that concern of a little bit of burnout after so long. We're talking about Mane and Salah, the players that have had no time off at all. Firmino's form sort of dipped slightly last season at certain times. Again, maybe because he was playing so many minutes. Obviously, the hope is that Minamino will step up and come in a little bit more, but he's a very different type of player to Salah or Mane. And the problem has always been that when Salah or Mane are taken out of the team, the drop-off to the next option, Divock Origi in most cases, is so vast. It's a massive drop-off. And we all know that Timo Werner would more than likely be lining up for Liverpool on Sunday had the coronavirus pandemic not have happened. And it does seem like he would have been the absolute ideal player in terms of he can play on the left, he can play through the middle, he's very quick, so he actually replicates what Salah and Mane bring to the team and is of the right age profile. I think if there's another player like that Liverpool can bring in, but they'll probably need to sell a few players. We all know the 4 players that Liverpool would gladly let leave if the right price comes in. So obviously we're talking about Origi, Harry Wilson, Marco Goric and Xherdan Shaqiri. Players who aren't really contributing and not really a good enough backup.
Not a part of that full-time plan, yeah.
So they're the 4, and if they can sell 1 or 2 of them and then fund somebody, whoever it may be, then it's something fresh would be nice up there. I think that we all agree on that.
You've got to bring players in. I know we're not in a position where you need to bring in another goalkeeper or another centre back or another midfielder as such, or even another starting centre forward. Klopp's built that spine now for Liverpool that should last a few seasons, but you do need to strengthen in areas, and you need to freshen up the squad in areas. And I don't think Liverpool need to go out and replicate what Chelsea have done and spend a lot of money. But for me, I think they need another forward. And Matt's just said it, not with the big enough drop off to Origi. And I do like Divock Origi, but I don't think he offers the same sort of level that the normal front three do.
Well, on that, Chris, Ryan Brewster has another couple of goals. Are you surprised that it almost seems like Klopp doesn't want to go that direction with Ryan Brewster, given how talented he is and what potential upside he could have without having to spend money in the transfer market?
I'm a little surprised because the back end of last season, every time it seemed that Liverpool were playing, Brewster was playing in the kickoff, and there was just a goal every single time. But I think we all know there is a bit of a difference between the Championship and the leagues below and the Premier League. But maybe give him that chance, that opportunity to show what he can do. And that is a bit of a strange one for me because it looks like, on paper and stats-wise, he could come in and do a job. But, Jurgen Klopp would work with him day to day and will know what he offers and what he offers to his squad. And maybe it's just not at that level he needs. We've obviously brought in a left-back cover, which was desperately needed. And we'll see Costas at some point, potentially, if Robertson gets injured. And then, of course, there's the central area where I think we're actually okay. We've got some really good midfielders, and I'm still waiting for Naby Keita to fire into what he's best known for and what everyone saw at Leipzig. But there's that rumour that won't go away. That is Thiago going to come in from Bayern Munich, and I think he would offer a plan B to Liverpool if he would come in. He would offer something else for managers to think about, not just trying to stop the 2 wing backs getting high and off making Liverpool play down the middle. But as it stands, I think we do have 3 good midfielders. I think people expect more from Gini Wijnaldum because they see him play for Holland and he's asked to do a different role at Liverpool. And a little like if you take Henderson out of the picture, if you take Wijnaldum out of the picture, I think you only then see what you're missing. So it's a difficult one. But I'm not only do I work in football, I'm a Liverpool fan, I'd love to see us bring in players every single year to keep the freshness going and to challenge the front three. I personally think the front three need a challenge because no matter what they do, good or bad, they're the first three names on the team sheet week in, week out.
I must be the negative one. I actually think that we need to bring in another centre-back. I feel like everyone's talking about this way. I look and I go, Matip is so injury prone. Joe Gomez has picked up key injuries in a couple of seasons. I know, again, we talk about the front three. We've been lucky with Van Dijk as well. I'd like to bring in there. But we'll end the transfer talk on end of the transfer window, put you guys on the spot. What do you think Liverpool have done? What do you think they will do? And what area do you think Jurgen Klopp will prioritise as bringing in a player from now till October?
Look, I think that we've kind of covered it in that we know that they will, if they can, bring in a fourth choice centre back, somebody to provide a bit of cover to Van Dijk. Van Dijk played every minute of every league game last season. Yeah. There's no way on earth that happens this season. It can't happen due to the season being 5 weeks shorter more than anything. So yeah, centre half cover, depth in attack, and if Thiago can be signed, then that one maybe gets over the line. But I think they're all going to go to that last week of the window, potentially even later, because if the interest in Sarr from Watford is legitimate, the transfer window there is actually another 10 days later. So
just add to the craziness on Twitter for another week. Chris, you think Thiago joins?
I think if the price is right, I'd love for him to join, but Liverpool is a very, very well-run club, and it's financially sound for a reason because, Thiago, if he doesn't come in on October the 15th or whatever it is, October the 5th or 15th for 20 million, he's going to come in 9 weeks later for free and then join in the summer. It's a lot of money to ask somebody to spend for what would be, 9-10 weeks later on. You can pick him up for free. More importantly, like Matt said, I think we need a forward more than anything else. And if we can bring a forward in and potentially a centre-back cover, although Klopp said he'll like to be creative in that area, which I think we all know means Fabinho will play.
Yeah, that's it. That's a word for it, yeah.
But yeah, for me, it has to be a forward. I think if we can bring in a forward, be it Sarr or be it anybody else at that level, I'd be happy.
I think that's the thing.
I'm excited for Minamino. I really am. I think Minamino's shown flashes. I think he's just a player that brings a little something different. I think he can play as an attacking midfielder if we're playing against teams in that low block as well. I'm going to say it. I think Thiago's a Liverpool player, whether it be October or, as you said, Chris, January. But from what I'm told, he wants to be at Liverpool. The feeling's mutual from Klopp, which is why he's not inventing a word to end the constant speculation. That word is no, by the way. That's the word he needs to say, but he's not going to say it. But we'll leave that aside. We'll move on. What do you want to see in this Chelsea game? It's a tough schedule for Liverpool to open with. Leeds first, then you have Chelsea and Arsenal. If you can come out of these fixtures, Everton as well in the first 5, who look like they're going to be better. I think you set yourself up nicely for the, to retain the crown. But this Chelsea one is the one where they have a lot of pressure on them for me, given they've spent so much money to prove they can compete at the top end. What are you guys expecting from this game? What do you think will happen?
Well, look, we're saying that it's tough, but hopefully we've hit it just right.
Yeah.
We won't have signed a new goalkeeper by Sunday. If he's in goal, then we should be fine. The concern is if we play him in 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks' time and they sign an actual goalkeeper who can, make saves, then it'd be much harder game. So, yeah, hopefully Kepa's in goal for them still. Hopefully he's playing Kai Havertz out on the right, which sort of reminded me a bit of when Brendan Rodgers was playing Firmino on the right against Man United at Old Trafford. You boys know Bundesliga much better than me, but everything that I know, that is not Havertz's position. The concern is obviously that Chelsea have got still to bring in Chilwell. I don't know if he'll be fit for Sunday, but
I feel like Pepe will come back in. Yeah,
Pulisic. Of course, a lot of problems last year as well. So that attack is a concern. Like you said at the top of the show, Keith, it could be another 5-4, 6-5 kind of game because both teams are a little bit susceptible in defence, but very top heavy. So more than anything, I just want a clean sheet. If we get a clean sheet, we win the game. It's simple as that. Don't think that's going to happen, but if you were to ask me for one thing that I would want from it, sat here right now, clean sheet, happy days.
Chris, by the way, if Kepa has man of the match at the weekend, we're cutting that clip out, right? And we're going to play it because, he's the much maligned goalkeeper. But I still think he'll be there at the weekend. I know the Rennes goalkeeper's been linked. I still think he'll start. Chris Havertz, he's played, when I've watched him at Leverkusen, he's played as a false 9. He has played out wide. I think everyone knows he's going to be a 10, but he's not quite there yet. He's still a work in progress to become the great we all know he can be. And Matt, I'd agree with you. I don't know whether you'd follow on that, Chris. If you're playing a team that's trying to bed a number of signings in and trying to figure that out, I felt Leeds was a bad matchup. I feel like it's quite good getting Chelsea this early in the season.
I thought they played quite well tonight, Chelsea. And yeah, I think you are right. I think you're both right. It's probably a good time to face them. I wouldn't like to have faced them, match day 12, match day 15, etc., when they've had a lot of time to gel. I thought they were pretty good going forward, but I saw enough of their back line to think that we'll be actually okay. If we keep a clean sheet, I'll be very happy. That's one thing I don't think we'll keep with that forward line they've got and the way we play. I'm pretty sure we won't keep a clean sheet. I think maybe they might get 1 or 2, but I'm pretty confident that we could get 2 or 3. And that's just going off that game against Brighton this evening and seeing how we played against Leeds over on the weekend. But yeah, for me, if Havertz is used out of position, that can only benefit us. Hopefully he will maybe use Werner out of position a little bit, bring him more centrally than let him drift over from the right or the left. It's going to be a tough game. And I mean, the game that we played at Anfield not that long ago, I think showed how good we are when we're on it. And I think we relaxed a little bit, and that's why they got themselves back into it. Until Pulisic came on, they weren't in that game at all. So it's probably something to give Lampard to think about. But Liverpool at the moment, we've got a really tough run of games, and this is one of many. I think that until we get to match day 6 or 7, I think looking at the fixtures earlier, it might even be as far out as 10. And then we go into what you would call in inverted commas an easier run of game. So if we can pick
the West Ham Villa run, don't you? Where it's
and we've seen, we've got some big fixtures. Okay, Leeds was a big fixture because of what they offer and where they come from and who their coach is. But Arsenal, Chelsea, Everton, they're 3 fixtures I would have liked a little bit later on, and home fixtures, especially with fans in. So we've not got that at the moment. But if we can pick up points on the road and pick up all points at home, I think we should be okay to get into that more safer area when we should be picking up 3 points week in, week out.
Top analysis there, Chris. To win away and win at home, and we'll be okay.
Well, no, draw away and win at home. As long as you don't lose away. And then
we're on pace for 114 points. So I mean, after one game. But am I the only one when you look at this Chelsea team? I feel like they're better, and I feel like he always plays well against the Liverpool back four is Giroud. I think he's a perfect foil for someone like Werner to drift out, and maybe even Pulisic if he's back as well. I don't want Olivier Giroud to play. For me, it's better if they try fit in all of these big money signings and they have to figure it out. When Giroud has played, even dating back to, I remember 3-3 at Anfield when he was at Arsenal, he absolutely tore the back four apart then. So I'm going to go against both of you here, though. I'm going to give my prediction first. I think Liverpool win this game. I think they win 2-0. And I think they pick up a clean sheet. I think Fabinho comes back into midfield. I think that's a given. I thought second half we looked better with him there. I think it'll be Henderson, Wijnaldum. It'll be the midfield we expect. And I think Liverpool get Chelsea at exactly the right time and pick up a 2-0 win. What's your guys' predictions on it?
I mean, we spoke about the defensive concerns, but you've got to remember that Trent and Gomez had been away with England, and they were playing a slightly different system with England. So they're now going to have had just over a week to train together under Klopp and everything. So I think that defensively we will be more structured, better. So I'll go for a 2-1. You've gone for 2-0. I'll go for 2-1. I think that Chelsea are going to be causing us problems, and it'll be a very, very difficult game. But I almost feel like it would be quite nice if it was one of those old school where you used to get Mourinho type games where everyone would hype it up and then it'd be boring and somebody would just win 1-0 or it was 1-1 even. I'd be kind of happy with that if it was, because my heart can't take 4-3 38 times this season.
I was going to say 2-1. I mean, you stole my sandwiches. So I'm going to say 2-1. Chelsea look to get that equaliser and we nick a third one just before the end. So I'm going to say 3-1. But yeah, I agree with the points that you both raised. And I just hope that when we get our chances, we can take them, because if we do, I think we will create a lot of chances. If we can take the majority of them, I think we'll be okay.
We'll revisit this. Thank you for listening in. Anybody at home who wants to tweet at myself, Chris, or Matt, or This Is Anfield with questions, we're going to try to do this every week, talk about Liverpool's performances and definitely talk about the transfer window as well. But next up is Chelsea. We've all predicted a win. Let's check back in next week and see how we've done.